Hey, in this video, I want to continue my Sentinel lab series so that you can understand what activities are included in Module 2. Let's dive into Module 2 of the free lab for Sentinel. So next step is for us to configure the data connectors. Now, data connectors are a way for you to plug in your different log sources into Sentinel. Now, what Microsoft has done over the past few months is move away from the data connectors page, which is this one right here, which was located under configuration. So they moved away from it. You can see here the message at the top and what this means, right? So they moved away the content from data connectors to what is now called the content hub, right? So all the data connectors are found under the content hub. So for us to continue on with our lab, we need to go to content hub, and then that's where we find different solutions that enhance our capabilities within Sentinel and that connect us to log sources. And without getting too much into it, but the difference between just simple data connectors to content hub solutions is that data connectors were just meant to connect you to data sources, whereas solutions within, so content source called solutions here, within Content Hub will include not only data connector, or most of the times they will include data connectors, as you can see listed here. I'm in front of it. Let me move myself to the other side. But you'll see a description and a summary of what each solution includes. You can see here that we have 2 data connectors in this particular solution guide. We also have 54 analytics rules for it, 2 workbooks, 36 hunting queries for this particular solution within Content Hub. So that's the main difference, right? Before we would only have data connectors, and we would have to do that and potentially enable different analytics rules elsewhere. But now we have solutions that include and package everything up for us. So that's the main difference between the regular data connector to Content Hub. Great. So now, what kind of data connectors should we onboard? I will recommend and would recommend all the free data sources that Sentinel can use. So by default, Microsoft has a number of free data sources that you can always ingest into Sentinel, and you should look into onboarding those. So what are those? Let's find out. Here you go. I moved again. Now, what I want to highlight here is this page. So if you just look for Microsoft Sentinel benefit, you'll find this page. It highlights some of the benefits the Microsoft E5 customers get with Sentinel, but also at the bottom, it lists out the following Microsoft 365 data sources, which are always free for Microsoft Sentinel users. So it's beyond the E5, right? So these here at the bottom, they're always free, essentially, regardless whether you are an E5 customer or not. Which are those? So Azure activity logs. So we're going to onboard this. We're also going to try and onboard Office 365 audit logs. And then lastly, alerts from Defender for Cloud, 365 Defender, which I highlighted before in my architecture, Defender for Office 365, Defender Identity, Defender for Endpoint, Defender for Cloud Apps. So all our XDR stack. So all of these alerts are always free into Sentinel. So let's go ahead and onboard these data connectors. Okay, so under Content Hub, we have to look up for these data connectors. So if we look for Azure, we can see here the first one, Azure Activity. So this is always free. What's comprised into here, we can see 12 analytics rules, 1 data connector, 14 hunting queries, 1 workbook. Let's go ahead and install it. That's the first thing we need to do. It's going to take a few seconds. Installation progress at the very top there. Let's just wait for it. There you go. Installation was a success. It's refreshing the page. And as it refreshes, when I click again on this particular solution, Azure Activity, on the right-hand side, what I see is a button instead of install. We are now be able to manage it. So when I click on manage it, I then get a list of all those different capabilities that are listed as part of the solution. All the content part of the solution is listed out to me. So all the analytics rules, all the threat hunting or the hunting queries, workbooks that are included in the solution, and the data connector. Now notice how everything has these exclamation mark. Exclamation mark means that we still need to configure that, right? So let's go ahead and click on the first one there, the Azure Activity Data Connector. That is the most important one. So what we want to do is to click on it, then open connector page. As I open my connector page, then shown what are the prerequisites for enabling this. I also get a list of the configuration required for me to do that. And it tells me what are the steps for me to connect it. Now for this particular one, I need to connect my subscription through diagnostic settings, new pipeline. So thankfully, this can be done easily by just clicking on that button, and then I have to choose a scope for this particular deployment. This is an Azure policy that's going to send or stream all Azure activity logs to a specified log analytics workspace. So it's a very important configuration, right? That needs to be scoped out properly in your environment. So if you have multiple subscriptions and everything else, that could be could require some thinking behind it. Now in our trial, you're likely only going to have one subscription, one scope, and so on and so forth. Let's go ahead and just set it all up. Once that's done, you're going to see the status change from not connected to connected to this data connector. And then this is going to disappear on your end. What needs to be done next is really going through this list of analytics rules. So that's very important. Understanding your use cases and understanding what threats or what potential alerts from all of these analytics rules are relevant to your environment. Go ahead and do that, enable each one of them. For example, if I click on one of them, it's going to list out the rule in here. I'm going to click on it. I'm going to click on create rule, and then I'm going to go through the analytics rules creation process. So the creation process is streamlined for every rule you create. Essentially, you need to enable that rule. You need to set up settings for what an incident for that rule looks like, such as tactics and techniques that are involved in that particular query that you are creating in your environment. You're going to set the rule logic. So the benefit of having analytics rules populated for us is that all the rule logic is pre-populated for us. Very little is needed from a customization perspective. Some rules will require specific information and parameters to be set up in the rule logic, not this one. So I get to just confirm that there's nothing else for me to add. So I just click on create at the bottom and I save it, and then it's gonna save the analytics rule and enable it in my tenant. As an example, this is the list of all active rules currently set up in my environment. Again, it's just set this up. So there's not many analytics rules set up, but there's also not a lot of log sources. So there's not potential for a lot of stuff yet. So looking at other ones that we can onboard, Microsoft 365, for example, Defender. So when I click on it, I get to see that there's a lot of content that can be enabled here. Let me click on install and go ahead. Now notice how under the content hub, we also have other different kinds of content that we can set up, right? So far I've only looked at solution, which are bundles of workbooks, analytics rules, data connector, and so on and so forth, all into one line item here. But there's standalone workbooks as well, such as Microsoft 365 Posture, for example. So if I wanted to install it, I could just click on it. Then it tells me what are the requirements for it, so required data that I need to have. And if I do have some of them, or ideally all of them, I can just go ahead and install that. Okay, continuing on with 365 Defender connector. Let me click on manage here, and then I'm gonna get to see some configuration needed again. So you have to choose this data connector, open the connector page. I'm gonna get to see the prerequisites and if I do have access to everything in here. And then I'm gonna see the configuration steps. For this one, it's pretty straightforward. I need to connect incidents and alerts by authenticating to my Microsoft 365 tenant. Now, you do have to have Microsoft 365 Defender access to enable this one, so you likely don't have that, so it won't work for you. For me, it did work. It was almost seamless. Now at the bottom here, I can state what kind of events I want to send from 365 Defender to Sentinel on top of the alerts. So I could choose all of them if I wanted to for 360 for Defender for Endpoint. And if I wanted to stream more information to Defender for Office, I can. Defender for Cloud Apps. So what these are essentially tables, right? Tables that are going to be created in my log analytics workspace in Sentinel that I'm going to be able to query them. And if I do have use cases for them as a cybersecurity analyst, I can reference them and create custom and complex KQL queries on top of them, leading on to analytics rules, for example, and then even automation on top of that, all of that information if I wanted to. Now that's exciting. First time I see that. Defender vulnerability management coming soon. That's good. Now let me apply all these changes. And as you can see, stuff are turning green, meaning they are connected. There you go. So I went back to my list of Content Hub, and now I can see that I have 3 installed connectors. So let's learn something new. Let's learn how to filter out all this Content Hub by their status. So instead of showing me everything that I have available, let's just take a look at installed connectors. So you can see that I have 365 Defender here installed. There you go. The next data connector that I want to do is something that you should be able to do as well, which is Defender for Cloud. Let me go ahead and choose all of them in here, and I can see the Defender for Cloud solution here. Let's go ahead and install it. Once it's installed, let's go ahead and manage it, ensure that the data connector is turned on, which by default it isn't, which is fine. Let's go ahead and open the connector page again, scroll down to the bottom, and then I get to see the list of my subscriptions, and I have to just tick it or check it so that it's connected. Now right here, I get to see an option called bidirectional sync, which is currently enabled. So what bidirectional sync is the synchronization of alerts from Defender for Cloud into Sentinel. So if I change the status of an alert in Defender for Cloud, it's going to reflect in Sentinel and otherwise. So that's the same, right? So that's great for us to not have double work on alerts. Now the next step from the training lab guide is to enable a threat intelligence taxi data connector. And I've attempted to go through the process, but unfortunately the free taxi 2.0 feed with threat intelligence, so free threat intelligence feed, is not available for new subscribers or new signups. So you won't be able to follow that along anymore. But what I've done is I've looked for an alternative free data source, and I found one from Alien Vault. So you can create an account in Alien Vault OTX and then go through the setup process by someone from Microsoft. So there's a good guide from a colleague of mine, Tiago, who just goes through the setup on how to create that using essentially all the free resources you have in your Azure subscription anyway. So for your reference, this is the guide I was referring to. It's a great guide. I managed to follow along to set it all up myself as well. So I would recommend you do the same and set up your feed this way. So once you do go through that process, you're going to have a logic application or a logic app from Azure enabled in your account here, and you're going to have the status set to enable. So that is how this gets done from your end. So hopefully you found this video informative. If you do like it, please drop a like. If not, dislike, leave a comment, and also subscribe if you find this content useful for you. Thank you.